Hello and welcome to another episode of Supercoach Insider. My name is Chris,
I'm Swizz.
and we don't have the Ben today, so this is a unique position for us, old Swizzy boy. But we thought we'd motor on without him. He's doing parental duties at the moment, so we thought we'd give him a bit of a break, and he'll be back on probably for the next podcast later on this evening when we record that one. But we thought we would get on today with the Gold Coast. So check us out on all of our social platforms, obviously at SC Insider 100 across Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, of course, and search us at Supercoach Insider. What else are we on? We're on all the major podcast stuff.
SC 100, Supercoach 100, whatever it is on the Twitter, mate, and Swizz 26, mate. Let's get us on there.
You can see that we're really used to this,
don't we? We've got everything these days, but the main ones, mate: YouTube, TikTok, Twitter. That's where it's at.
Absolutely. Brought to you by, of course, Splash Vodka. But today I'm obviously on board with the espresso martinis made by my beautiful partner. So Thank you very much, Eliza. Welcome. What are you on today, mate?
I'm on the waters, actually. Still on the waters on my recovery. So, yeah.
Hey, buddy. My beautiful boy just decided he would wake up. He wants to be on the podcast. So hello. Hey, buddy. What's going on?
There we go.
Hey, Noah. Why don't you say hello to everybody?
It's probably timing too, because we've got Gold Coast, so they're always young and that. You know, and you being up there, mate, you might be a future son.
Absolutely. No, he's such a bright little kid. He's definitely makes my world go round. So very happy as a new dad, I guess. But I suppose we'll get right into it. Gold Coast Suns. Luckily, we didn't actually have to do any research for this, mate, because Ben did it all. So it's probably biased and completely incorrect, but whatever. We'll get into it. So obviously the Suns, they finished 12th last year. So 10 wins and 12 losses. So they did have a slight improvement. And this is probably their sort of linear progression that I think that they're having. And I was just rattling off some interesting stats over to Swizz there, is that they actually were first for hit-outs per game. So obviously Witts had a best year yet. That also put them fourth in clearances per game, fifth in inside 50s. They were third in clangers, obviously, which isn't great. But despite those numbers, they were also 18th in handballs per game and 18th in disposals per game and 16th in marks. So basically what that means is if they weren't winning it at the clearance, they just weren't pushing the ball forward. And their ball movement probably needs a lot of work. So we obviously know their engine room is really where the big hitters are at. And now they need to develop the other ends. Obviously, Ben King going down early last year, I think that pretty much put a full stop on their season really early. So they are hoping that now with him back, that will change. We'll go with the ins and outs, of course, that they have on their list.
Before you get into that, mate, it's a good point you just made, because I think, again, us Victorians don't get to see them a lot, but the couple of times I did get to see them, it's not the kick and chip around like a lot of other teams' ball control that they have. It's they win it out of the centre, bang, down to Miller, Anderson, Rowell, kick it down. Now this year they'll have King back and Joel. Or it's like the transition game. It's kick straight down on that. But unlike a lot of the other teams that can spread and or have other alternatives to goal, it's literally stoppage, race down and that. And it's something, if they're going to become a more competitive team, they've got to completely work on. And the hope is that they have been working on it, because that's naturally a lot of that possession style footy helps Supercoach points.
Yeah, and look, I'm not sure really what Ju's doing in that regard. I'm not sure if it's development. A lot of what he's doing looks to me like he's trying to set the club up for long-term success. So they didn't necessarily play last year for we're gonna make the 8. Yeah, they played last year to educate their kids on how to play properly. Now, unfortunately, their ball movement is really what's been stagnant, and it has been for a few years, and they've been sort of trying to rectify that. So once the ball's forward, that's fine. But my problem is they're always under the pump. Obviously, Gold Coast, for example, get a lot of scores kicked against them. So trying to transition that ball from the back line to the forward line is where they really lack. Having marking tools able to take some contested marks on the wing and then push the ball forward, that's a big issue, of course. But even just that little transition, those 45 kicks to uncontested players, to try and open up some space for their runners to run off. That wasn't really happening either. So if the long down the line, I'm so sick of going to a Gold Coast game and seeing them play the same style, which is basically if they get a stop, a mark at halfback flank, they're not trying to look really often to switch the ball or anything like that. It's just basically long down the line, try and make a contest, use their strength, which is their contested ball, and then try and push the ball forward again, get a stoppage, etc. So I'm not exactly sure. That's not long term going to win them games. So hopefully that is a style that they're looking to phase out over this off season. But we don't know yet, obviously, until that comes to fruition and we see some preseason games. But I do feel like it was definitely more of a development year than an actual, okay, we're going to go out and win games of football. So yeah, we'll see how we go, but that's pretty much where it's at for the now. So in terms of their ins and outs, so they had Jed Anderson obviously came in after the stoush with reported fairly well, I think, between him and Alistair Clarkson. That's sort of been lingering over time. Tom Berry was traded in from Brisbane, so the younger Berry there. Connor Blakely they picked up as a rookie, so some experience that they can throw into the midfield if they need to. I'm guessing that really, to me, that's more of a injury trade in, so some depth on the list, nothing really else. Bailey Humphrey, the number 6 draft pick, so great little small medium forward there. Lloyd Johnston, Category B rookie. Ben Long, they traded across from St Kilda. Brodie McLaughlin, they've picked up a couple of preseason supplemental picks, and one of those is Brodie McLaughlin, so he's a forward as well. Same sort of similar motives like Chris Burgess, picked up from the state leagues. Obviously, been proven goal kicker over the last few years, and they've picked him up. I'm assuming again a bit of depth there, and they've also picked up Jake Stein from the rookie draft, who was originally from GWS, wasn't he? So some defensive backs there, and then of course out. So Jack Bowes was the big one. Salary obviously cutting was the main reason for that one. However, I found it really interesting that he wasn't even getting any game time. So they really got out of that, but obviously had to give up pick 7 for that. Matt Conroy was delisted. Josh Corbett was traded over to Freo, so they got a little bit back for him. Jez McLennan, the guy that I've basically had on my bench every preseason for the last 3 years, who'd never got a game, was delisted. Oleg Markov delisted and now picked up by the Pies. Patrick Murtagh delisted. Reece Nichols delisted. Isaac Rankin. So the big one obviously was the trade over to Adelaide there, which was a big loss for them and they didn't want to have. And then, of course, Rory Thompson has finally retired. So some ins and outs there. Fixture-wise, they play twice against Adelaide, Brisbane, Carlton, North, St Kilda and Sydney. First 4, Sydney, Essendon, Geelong, St Kilda. So some winnable games, but some hard games there as well sprinkled in. And then the last 3 are Sydney, Carlton and North. They have the round 13 bye, so arguably the best bye this year in Supercoach. And they've got their draw listed as the 10th hardest or 8th easiest, I suppose, however you want to write that. But they play 4 home games from the first 10 rounds. So not a lot of
I think their start of the
shining
year is
light there.
awful. Their start of the year
Yeah.
generally because their tough games are at home. So I guess you can look at it both ways. Okay, the harder teams you get at home, and that which becomes maybe 50-50, but they're going to be hard ones. But then the easier games, they're playing away, so they're not just you'd prefer probably some of those easy games at home, so you can bank some wins and stuff. So Sydney, Geelong, to have them at home. They do have North there, but it's Melbourne as well. So it's tough as you get. Like you get 3 of the best teams on your home deck, and then in between that, you're traveling to Fremantle. They're traveling to. Where are they playing? It's like the Barossa Valley or something to play Fremantle, or something like that. Or that might be the Norwood one, or it's one of those sort of things and that. And they still have the derby against Brisbane, but that's an away game too. So they've been absolutely. And then I think they've got the back-to-back Darwin matches after that. So they I don't think they've been helped out by the fixture at all in that first sort of.
No, and I mean, people would argue that they got helped out by the AFL enough. So, look, I actually really like the Gold Coast. I really hope that they become successful. Obviously, being up here in Brisbane and hating Brisbane, I really want Gold Coast to be successful, and they are a fun team to watch. They can be entertaining. The games down at Metricon are fantastic. I would definitely encourage anyone that is on the Goldie and there's a game on to get along, because it is a good atmosphere, and it's good to go down. But yeah, I really struggle with their starting list. I suppose this is an overall premiums view before we jump into their specifics. Starting them, they do have a rough run to start. So guys like Touk, are you going to be banking him down 660K? Guys like Witts, they do have some big premiums here. I looked at even Witts' ruck run, and it's not great. Like it's actually kind of on par. Like I was like, oh, let's just try and like throw him up against Darcy Cameron to sort of see what sort of ruck run they have. It's almost identical in terms of their ruck run, in terms of who they're going up against. So
Actually,
it's not even good on
I
that
actually thought
front.
his ruck run's not too bad. That to start off with. But
There's
I
a
don't
lot
like
of
the other premiums for their run, but Sydney and Essendon, Geelong with their makeshift ruck line. Okay, St Kilda
Sydney
and
and
St
so
Kilda and
Sydney and
Freo a bit
Essendon
more
are all right.
harder than that, but then even Richmond,
Yeah.
it's Nank, like it's not huge. Like North Melbourne, is it going to be still Goldies? It's going to be cheery at that point. So I don't think until they sort of hit that round 8, 9, 10, 11 period where it gets tough, but I don't mind it in that
Well,
first 5-6 weeks.
So yeah, so they have Sydney in their first game, which is not bad, but then they've got Geelong. So Stanley is obviously a very negating ruck. Then they play
That's if
Melbourne,
they've
who
been
have the
playing
two
Seaglow
big
mode
rucks.
at that point. But Melbourne's
Well, yeah, I mean,
but that's when it hits. It's like 8, it's like the double ruck, then 9's Nadanui,
yeah,
10's Big O, 11's English. So he hits the tough rucks coming into his bye. But before that, the only good thing is if you weren't starting Witts, and we've probably got into a bit of premium chat right now about him. If you were, some people are talking about the Lysett or Darcy Cameron sort of options, the cheaper options, to see what sort of happens.
yeah,
There's potential there as he comes into his bye that he might have his toughest games and lose some cash,
and you can
and
possibly
then
pick him
pick him
up.
up
Yeah.
then. So that's not a bad strategy to look at, because I know a few people are like, well, Lysett, can he be this year's Witts? Darcy Cameron, can we swing him forward when he's ready to go?
Well, we may as well just jump straight into Witts then, I
Yeah,
guess, because he's probably that one. But look, at 600, he's the ruck obviously that broke out last year, had his best ever year. He averaged 109. However, he was averaging 130 for most of the season, and then just decided right in the back end to sort of drop off the cliff. So I'm not too sure if that was. Excuse me.
yeah, no. While you sneeze
Still
away
a bit
there,
under the
I'll get
weather.
that. Yeah, and maybe it's just the fact is he hadn't played. Like it just, you get tired, worn out. He didn't really have that much of a chop up. And after you haven't played really the whole of the season before, naturally you are going to become a bit tired and stuff like that. But up until then, yeah. But the teams again, like as we said, he was smashing it. But they were like, yeah, the 140 against Big O, you can see that happening. The 136 against Darcy Cameron, and Darcy Cameron, that was when I think he first took over the ruck role by himself. Sydney's ruck. I don't know if Tim English played that night against the Doggies. I feel like English may have been missing.
Yeah.
So Port Adelaide
Well,
didn't have
it ended
Lycett.
up being 119.5 over the first 12,
Yeah,
and then
but
98 over
what
the
I'm
last
saying is
10.
those matchups again, where like the end of the year where we were talking about that, the 116 against Geelong, the 90 against Goldstein, 85 against Natanui. So he actually went up
Yeah.
against proper rucks there, and as he was probably getting more exhausted as the season's gone on, did drop off, and that's where we we're just talking about their draw then.
Yeah.
Can
Now, it
we?
also could obviously be back on the back of his previous injury. So he had an ACL the year before, right? So, would have been running for quite a long time, comes into games, and then, it's the grind of the season. So I think there's a combination of things there. He also played 22 games, though, I guess, at the end of the day.
Yeah. So he's
So one of
reliable
the only ruckmen that is doing that.
on that. It's not, he didn't miss because it was soft tissue injuries or stuff like that. He's had the legit ACL. Unfortunately, can happen to anybody. But yeah, no, he was fantastic for those who went with him, and definitely by far the number one ruck. But we're now looking at that big $600,000 price tag, and is there big sort of better options around it? I think that's where everyone's sort of doing the comparison there, going, can I save some money, even the 20K down to English? Because I think English has got the more upside, but we know his consistency on the field, which is a problem. And then, as we said, those couple of cheaper options around them, the Grundys, the Marshalls, Lysetts, Camerons, that's I think that's
Yeah.
where which the captain is going to play. He can score really well, and I think he starts really well. But then, maybe he hits a little bit of a speed bump coming into the bye.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, what we do know is that the Gold Coast, their midfield's there is their big mover, right? So, like we predicated at the start of the start of the podcast, they were fourth in clearances and first for hit outs. So, obviously, Witts had a lot of hit outs to a really good midfield that obviously could win a lot of clearances. So, that's going to win him a lot of points just based on that. One of the things that I really liked, really sort of caught my eye in regards to Gold Coast CBAs, was the fact that they basically had four guys in the CBAs and then nothing after that. So if it wasn't Touk had 80%, Matt Rowell had 81%, Noah Anderson had 72%, and then there was David Swallow who had 39%, then like a splattering of other guys around that 20% mark or less. Alex Davies had a bit towards the end of the season. Braden Fiorini, when he had a couple of games, obviously played in the guts. But yeah, that's about it. So it's all based on those three those big three, and then there is kind of a space for a fourth because I think that Swallow is at the tail end of his career. I'm not sure he's going to play much more inside this year. I don't necessarily think Alex Davies is a long-term project for them in terms of a solution to that. The big one that probably comes in is someone like uh, Flanders, obviously, but we'll touch on him a little bit later. But those three guys are they're rolled gold midfielders, every single one of them. So he's going to be tapping to them as long as they stay fairly well injury free. I don't think he's going to drop off too much if he does drop. I think he's still going to be pretty consistent. I'm just worried about the price. So, I mean, he's been in your team. I think early in Supercoach, he was in my team and I locked him down real early as someone that I'm just, he's going to play. So, like, whatever, I just need a ruck that's going to play because none of the other rucks are there. But do you see him, what do you see him scoring for the year? What's that?
So he's come out of mine just recently. Um,
Okay. What's the big reason why? Is it more
It's
price?
more
Is
I
it
think
more
it's price and that. The
structure?
more, like, I kinda hear that sort of Lycett's body and getting through the preseason, I was just more liking that kinda option a little bit more, because it's a big difference in 180 cash, and I don't think it's gonna be a huge difference in points. Like, yeah, so he's had an absolute career year, was and yeah, absolutely awesome. But what are we talking there? We're talking an average of what we got there, 110. I don't think he keeps that up. I think it probably comes back to a maybe 102 to 106 sort of range of that. And
Well, he was a career, sort of just under 100-point scorer
that's
for
right.
three,
That's
4
right.
years,
So
so.
can he back up 110? I don't. It's not improving. So I think it's maybe around that. Yeah, as I said, that 102, 106. And then the question in my head is, okay, how close can these other rucks get to him? And is it worth it for an extra 100, 120K? Um, and that's where I'm saying, they're sort of looking at that. Or even like English is the other one, where if I can have an English instead of Wits for the 20 grand cheaper, yeah, but then you're taking more of a risk because at some point English is probably going to miss. Where Wits, I'm more confident that,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I think he's a solid choice if you're the sort of person who likes to just kind of set and forget your rucks, don't like to use trades, lock in your Wits Marshall combination, and you probably no problems there. The only risk people are going to have there is, okay, Wits, I think he probably gets down to maybe that 550, 560. No, it's not a huge drop, but I think he probably does, flattens out to about that 102. And what if English, or what if Lycett, absolutely, like if English just goes off and stays on the park, or what if Lycett becomes Wits 2.0 this year and, gets to that sort of same price, if not more, and there you're behind everyone else because of that. So the advantage people have who they pick Wits is if English goes down, Lycett goes down, something like that, and you guys are laughing because it's like, okay, I went to set and forget. It's not costing me trades. I'm just taking my 105 points each week, no problem. So yeah, I think it's a solid pick, safe pick, but yeah, I kind of like a little bit more value and risk in some of my picks.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think when Supercoach opened, I was looking at more of a sort of guns and rookies strategy, a little bit more set and forget. Pick the guys that are going to be really reliable, play it a bit more safe. And then we got announced that you got 36 trades and trade boost back, and then I was like, oh, I can. Balls to the wall. Let's get all the mid prices in. I'm getting all value. I'm value hunting to the nines, and it's completely flipped how I'm doing my team. So I can understand that too. Interesting. You talk a lot about Lysette. I suppose we'll get to that in the port pod, but I'm not sold yet, but I could
Yeah,
be.
and I'm not
So
100% sold either, but I know some people are more looking sort of your Grundys, and that range in there, and some are still looking to see how Darcy Cameron comes back from that. It would have been Darcy Cameron for me in a heartbeat. But even a few I've seen Draper. I've seen different rucks on the cheaper version, and that's where people I think are sitting going, okay, what can I do with that 180? Do I get one of those rookies up to another mid-pricer? And is that, it's more of a risk play, but if it comes off, you're flying over those people who've got the safety net, where the safety net, you're
yeah,
just hoping this backfires on us.
I think that sort of pick is like the English pick of last year. Sort of, yeah, it's something that I did 5 minutes before lockout when we found out that English was solo rucking, and I was like, yeah, I'm locking him in.
Hmm.
Changed my entire
Yeah,
structure in
yeah.
the last 5 minutes of Supercoach. And it worked out for the better. All right, so moving on to Touk Miller. Obviously, he's the other prime mover out there in the midfield. 662k premium, absolute jet. Averaged 126.2 in wins and 115.4 in losses. So if, like we predicted, there's a little bit more development and some more wins on the horizon with the addition of Ben King back into that mix, another year into the kids, another year into that youth, and some better coaching. Potentially, let's say they turn that 10 wins into 12 wins. There's potential that he can average a little bit more there. But on the converse, like we've already said, they have a really tough lead run in as well. It's a little bit, I keep thinking of Touk and thinking like, he looks absolutely mean. Like he looks like he's about to just destroy this year. I have a mate of mine that I work with. Is friends with what's his name? He's a player. He used to play at the Gold Coast Suns. I think still a player. What's his name? Alex Sexton.
Oh, yeah,
And they
yeah,
caught up, and
yeah.
he just raved about the fitness of Touk Miller over this preseason. He's absolutely killed everyone by a mile, and he's the fittest he's ever been personally. So, in terms of a two-way runner that can absolutely destroy you, yeah, Touk Miller's got the opportunity to do that, and he's got the pedigree of a guy that can be an absolute top echelon scorer. So why wouldn't we pick him? I know you've been hot on him, Swizz. So is he still in
It's
your
a good
team,
one, Chris.
or
It is because like we were talking about it at cricket yesterday, and as what our boys are batting, we're talking Supercoach, and everyone's talking about he just looks so fit, like ridiculously fit, and everybody just wants to pick him on that. We know he's got the ceiling, which is always what I love in the premiums. Like he bangs out 150s for fun,
yeah?
which
He goes in
uh,
these runs where it's like 3-4 games in a row of 150, and then
it's
and you turn
ridiculous.
around, you're like, shit, where did that come
Yeah,
from? Yeah,
yeah, it's stupid and that, like, but he does like the floor is pretty good in that, like, he drops 90s, but it's not under that, like, so I think it could be that could a career year for him. I think a lot of people in that debate on, well, how many of these top liners do you go? Is it I feel like the discussion for a lot of people, it's Miller versus Mills in that spot if you're not going Clary. Like a lot of people on Clary, but if you're not going Clary, it's Miller, or do I save that extra 20k and can Mills do the same sort of thing? But I think they both could potentially be 1 and 2 this year. It wouldn't surprise me if we finished the year and we saw Touk as the number 1 player. But does that early draw worry me? Do I like the fact that that buy? Yeah, I love and hate their buy because I'm like, okay, it's two teams on it, and I'll have those 3 trades available for me if I want, or 4 if I wanted to boost. But let's just say 3 trades. Who am I going to grab after that buy? Well,
yeah.
realistically, it's
I've
only
thought about
Stewart,
that too. Yeah,
which I'm probably going to have anyway, and then it's potentially Witts and Touk. and that there's not many other players I'm grabbing from those teams. So do I want to? Usually, my last upgrades are coming from that early buys. So is Touk really going to outprice me? Where the point is, he's going to be 720k, and I'm not going to be able to get him in. Am I that worried about that situation? I don't think so. So I'm thinking, well, can one of the other premiums do the same job, and I just get Touk straight after his buy?
Yeah, look, we're really these sort of players, like the guys like Touk. Like I mentioned this in a tweet earlier and on a podcast earlier as well. There was 4 guys that averaged over 120 last year. One of them is Touk, right? And he's kind of a must-have if you think that he's going to go that again, which I do think he's going to. Sorry about that. Why does my phone every now and then just randomly play
randomly
YouTube?
playing stuff like that? No, and I
It's
get, mate.
weird.
I know you've got a point there. It's just like, it's like I think at some point I want him in my team. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
He's got to
So
be in our
okay.
teams
So
at some point.
now we want him in our teams at some point. 5 times last year he scored 150. Right. There was 2 games early on where he didn't make a single tackle, and he got a 76 and a 105 in round 3 and 4. Now in those games, so he went 137, 140, and then 76, 105. That's not normal. What actually happened was he got a bit of a shoulder stinger, and it came out later. So I actually owned Touk
Same here.
last year, and I was just absolutely pissed with his shitty scoring. And I was like, what's going on? Like, he looks like he's not interested. Like, he just wasn't the same Touk. And it came out, he actually did have a shoulder injury. So that's obviously restricted him. And I'm not sure if they tell him, no contact, like, or whatever. He does hit hard. So is that something from the coach? Like, if you've got the opportunity to, maybe don't tackle as hard, or don't go inside as much, or let's use you on the spread instead, because he was still inside, but he just wasn't getting the ball like he used to. Definitely impacted his scoring. So in those, he had a 4-week run, 76, 105, 107, 99, but then came back at and went 160, 122, 130. Now, if that's not the case and you get a fresh Touk right off the bat, is he starting like that? Is he going to make you regret not having him? Because he's just, man, talking about it, I just don't. It actually scares me not starting.
The flip side again with that, because we go back the following year, and it's why I started him last year, because he went 124 the year before, but he had that slow start as well, the 80, the 78, the 96, and then just went absolutely freakish for the rest of the season. So, we've got 2 years of data where he's gone 120 plus.
So he's going to go 120 again, which means again you're going to start him. Is 660 a price that you're probably going to pay for him at some point? Like, is he getting down to 600 unless he gets an injury game or something like that? Like, I can't see him really going too much. He's not dropping that much where it's like really worth it. Like 50k probably at some point you might pick him up just over 600 or around 600. But are you really picking him up at 550, 580? Maybe.
And that's the thing. The year before, what I just talked about, from round 6, he averaged 131 of that. So it was just that, again, that sort of slow start. And then we look at last year, because of those couple of stingers and stuff. I think he might have had that game against the Bulldogs, and I'm not too sure why. I should try to find out why he went to 59. But from the where we here, I'm just trying to find what round was the Bulldogs game? Round 10. From that game, he actually went 128 for the rest of the season. So
wow,
he could be technically underpriced, and that's the thing. I think Laird's kind of priced me out of my team. Oliver is the one that spends more time in my team, and it comes down to me. It's like I feel like I can only afford to start one of it, of the big 4, the way I'm trying to set my team up. So do I like Clary or Touk better? I think there's more value possibly in Touk, but as I said, the buys, it's a thing of going, okay, I already own Touk through that buy. It's not going to affect me because it's still probably going to be best 22. It's not a big deal him missing that week. Where can I really wait that long? Because what if Touk doesn't get injured and he goes on these runs where he's going 128, 130? Like, what if he does not get an injury this year or no stinger or anything like that? he could average 130.
Yeah, I think there's value in his price point. I think there's between 5 to 10 points of value there on with a healthy Touk. You also got to remember he's now got Ben King, remember? So the forward line gets better, he gets better. So I can only really see, to me, improvement at his price. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily he's going up, because obviously the magic number thing does come into it, and everyone's going to drop regardless. I just think that he's the sort of guy with his 150 potentials. It's really hard. If he has, again, 5+ last year, so if he has one of those one every 5 games, this is not necessarily how it all works.
Mm.
Those averages are going to keep his price really, really high in those 3-round averages and rolling averages. And so it's going to be really hard to actually drop that down. And I just wonder, am I ever going to be able to afford him? Now,
Yeah, that's
is
the
he
thing. I was just
taggable?
looking. There was nothing the Bulldogs game. He just had a shocker, genuine shocker that game for his 59. So, but everything else, yeah, as we said, he just, yeah, God, when he's up and about, mate, he's one of the best in it.
Yeah, I struggle for reasons to not pick him. I suppose everyone would have him, right, if we could all afford him.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like he's not a guy
Well,
that's not
there's
on anyone's
teams like
radar.
I've seen where they've got, him, Neil, and Oliver, and they're just going, okay, we're going
Yeah.
that, and that's the guns and rookie strategy right there. So
So, I mean, I suppose if we were looking for a downside, let's look to the other two midfielders that are there that could also be a natural improvement pathway. So, you look at Noah Anderson, who's obviously on the up and up. Big talker as a sort of a mid-priced or sort of underpriced premium. And then, of course, Matt Rowell, who is probably a mid-priced mid. Both absolute guns. I'll start on Rowell, and I'll shift focus to Anderson, because I think Rowell probably has the most upside. He's the guy that was definitely told of those three, he's going to be a more defensive option in that midfield. He's played some tagging roles in the last 12 months. And I don't know if that's set up from Dew as a way of training him to be more accountable in his midfield craft. Same thing would happen with Touk Miller. 3 years ago, he was basically a designated tag and would tag everything. And then he got let loose, and he now is one of the best two-way midfielders in the competition by an absolute mile, right? So is that the same pathway for Rowell? Is he now going to be able to run off that leash and find some cheaper ball and be able to actually explode from a Supercoach perspective? Or is it more of the same for him, and that this midfield three needs a defensive presence in there, and they've just identified that Rowell is probably the best at that, so they're just going to keep that going? I don't know where that sits.
I'm leaning
And I
more
suppose it's
the first point that you had there, mate, where like what, and it's funny because as you said earlier with the CBAs, they're the opposite to GWS, where GWS just share theirs. They've banked their
yeah,
top three. I think there might be a little bit of tagging there from Real, but the idea that they could have two guys. We talk about Jack Steele being one of the best out of the two-way runners and defensive stuff. Miller's, he might even be number one. If you can have two guys like that, you can have two Touk Millers in the team, as in Miller and Rowell, who both can run both ways, and then allows Anderson to just do his thing. It's a real
yeah.
deadly trio to have in there.
Well, I think and so if we just talk about so in terms of Rowell, his ability to we know he's got the pedigree to score, but I just don't know if the role is there. Now,
Hmm.
that's where sort of Anderson comes in. His running ability and his use by foot is unbelievable. He's definitely better forward to center than he is, but he's also one of them that can rack up the pill. Um, I love Noah Anderson. I've been a big fan. I was super surprised by his output this early in his career. I thought he would take longer to develop than Rowell. Thought Rowell was the one that was straight off the bat, ready to go. And Noah's obviously played more games now because he hasn't had the injuries that Rowell's had to deal with. So he's more experienced, which is a little bit strange in itself. Um, there's probably room to grow for both players. I don't think you can select Rowell at his price thinking that he's going to break out, and then knowing that the other two are already having that much of the ball. Now, I understand as well that the Supercoach pie, how much of that pie does Gold Coast get? They're obviously already fourth in clearances. How much more ball could that midfield possibly get in order for them to increase their scoring? That's another concern, I guess. They'd have to win more games. Are they going to win more? I've said maybe 12 wins this season would be a great thing for them? Do you see them making finals and maybe doing 13? I think 14 wins will be minimum this year for top 8, given that there's obviously 23 rounds this year.
Yeah,
Can you see them
that's
getting up
right.
to 14
I
wins?
don't. I think they're in the mix. It all depends on how long their players can stay on the park. If Ben King plays 22 games and they have him as an option, then Chol moves to that second option, who looks very serviceable as a forward up there. If Rowell can stay fit, it gives them more wins, which gives them more percentage of the pie, and also some of those kicks. So if there are in wins and Anderson, Rowell, Miller are kicking it down King's throat and he's converting them into goals, it's
Yeah. So
naturally
there's a way.
yeah, there is a way. And naturally, just because of the conditions up at Metricon, the games always do seem to be that lower scoring. So there isn't a huge amount of goals where it's taking, some of the games that you see, at Marvel, for example, and it's like 120 to 110. And, all these
Yeah.
points are going everywhere for people kicking goals and, efficiency acts and you name it. Where, I think that's midfield. And because they play, 80% of the time in those guts, and there's not, the games end up being 70 to 60. They, I think they still get quite a large part of the chunk of the pie. And if they're winning more of those games, I think that converts. That we can see, Touk going 125. We can see Anderson. Where was he on last year? 100 or close to.
What was he on? He averaged 114 the last 8
Know what
rounds,
he did
but that's
was,
not what he averaged.
he overall 100 exactly. 100. Yep.
Yeah.
So I think people are hoping it's 110. I think it's definitely 15, and that it could push to that 110. And then so I think it's more those three that there's definitely points in them. And we always say, everyone's going up this time of the year, but I think
Yeah, right.
Anderson's probably 5 points, probably Rowell's probably 10 this year. I don't think it's going to be the big jump. And that's why you said, he's not pickable. Anderson, I don't mind the pick because we've seen it, but I don't think he's going to that 115 mark. That it wouldn't surprise me if he does, but it's 15 to 110. Maybe Rowell goes 10 points and he gets up to 100. And that, what is he, 87? So he probably gets around that range.
Yeah, I think 115 might be a stretch.
Yeah.
110's achievable. 105 is probably
How
where
many
it's at.
how many midfields outside and it happens like we see, Oliver and Petrarca, who are the number 1-2 combination. But outside of that, like Cripps and Walsh, Hewitt, you got 3 guys going 110, but not one of them's
And
gone
then there's
130 in that. Neil, he's gone one. Like I think Neil and Dunkley could probably go. McRae and Bont, but even Bont, like McRae's going 120, 125. Bont in those years is going 110, both guys aren't going
the difference
115, 120. And that it's very, very rare that you see both players. And so they've already got Touk going 120 plus. Anderson's not going to come and join him at 120.
And that's the question. I suppose that's the why I prefaced this conversation with Rowell and Anderson. This is the only point that I can make as to why Touk maybe not go to 130. So if there's more of a share or more of a load coming off Touk and more of the responsibilities going towards Anderson and Rowell, or maybe they start shifting those attacking midfielder opportunities over towards Touk, etc. But I suppose the way that he wins his ball at the end of the day is, just from his gut running. A lot of it is just from pure spread. So, look, I don't know. I suppose is the answer.
I don't mind.
I don't love Anderson for that reason.
If people
I don't love
both Touk and Anderson, because obviously we did Touk Rowell last year, but it didn't come off exactly with Rowell. But it's not terrible, and that I just think, if we were in a year where Tom Green and Tom Mitchell weren't there, I'd be going Anderson versus LDU. Yeah, I'm on Anderson because I can just see that little bit more upside with the wins and stuff like that. But unfortunately, there's maybe the best future. Well, then Clayton Oliver 2.0, and you've at the same price. So who am I taking? I'm taking Tom Green over Noah Anderson. And that's what.
And that's the other thing. So you've got other guys around that price point, and that's and arguably cheaper as well. So There's also like the conjecture. So with Noah, let's say you'd start with Touk or whatever, and you get to that round 13 bye, and you want to upgrade to these guys, right? Do you really see Noah Anderson pricing you out? It's probably going to cost around the same.
Yeah, at worst, it's 600. Like, it's
So
50K more on top of it. Like, the pricing out, and I know people are like, oh shit, that's 50K more. But pricing out's that when it gets over 100K, because that's what we're talking for those trades. We in perfect world, we want to trade for 150K. So if they're
yeah,
getting around that mark, that's how they've priced you out. So Anderson, is he getting to me in the 600s? I don't think so. And especially with some of those tougher games early on, is he going to go berserk against a Geelong? Like, it can happen. Can't say it, won't, but it's less likely for them to come out and
yeah,
not only score well against Geelong, but that means they've probably beat Geelong, and probably not happening. Are they beating Fremantle, away? It's going to be a tough game for them. Are they going to beat Melbourne? Again, it's tough games for them, and that's in their first 8. So I'm not confident that they're going to come out and go, oh, Gold Coast beat Melbourne by 4 goals and they score 120s. I just can't see that happening.
yeah. No, I agree. So I suppose if we had to, in those sort of 4 mid-price options, would you put Noah Anderson in terms of the like LDU, Mitchell, Green, and Anderson? Would you rank him last in terms
I've
of
got him just
because of
ahead of
price point?
LDU,
Because
just ahead
okay,
because of the buy and that. And
okay,
I think he's. And I've talked a little bit about this when we haven't done the North pod, but I know I've said about this. I just think the way Clarko might set them up might be a little bit more even. I think LDU might get a little bit more. We talk about adding that defense and two-way running and stuff like that. That wouldn't surprise me. It's the way Clarko
yeah.
coaches. Where Anderson, I think, is their more natural attacking midfielder.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a natural attacking mid for sure.
All right.
All right, I suppose that sort of hopefully that gives people enough information to sort of make an educated decision on these guys. And we don't know everything. We're just going through what our existing knowledge is and what the stats tell us and what our years of football knowledge go
Years of
into
football knowledge
this,
and
this
all
podcast.
that. Yeah, exactly, mate.
So we'll move on to some mid prices, I guess. So Ben Long's probably the one that's been a little bit more talked up more recently. I had a look at him and this went completely no straight away, pretty much. But just to go through him, the one good thing, he's a defender forward. So it means you can start him on either line and he can switch around with guys. So there are some guys out there that might get forward defenders such as Zeeble. He'll probably get that because he's a forward only this year. There are some like Ben King, not Ben, Josh Bruce, who will probably get that. So there are some guys that you can have that flexibility with. But just to go through him, 363K, so not even really a nice price point. It's a really awkward price. He had the one really great game in round 23 last year where he scored insane and had 17 marks and went really well with Supercoach. I actually did look at him previously and I can't remember what it was, but I think it was a preseason game. I think I started with him 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I think maybe. I think in the preseason he was just on fire and was playing that sort of halfback, loose, no one on him kind of role where he wasn't accountable. The problem is he doesn't generally get that role very often. Like he's not the real super damaging by foot and super damaging as that interceptor. So he often plays lockdown. Now, if he does get a role where he's completely the loose 7th defender, then it does look like that could be something that's good. However, I got burnt on this 2 years ago where he came out and scored like 30s. And I went, all right, well, that'll learn me. So for me, I'm just not even remotely interested. But I mean,
No, there's
what do you
500
think?
people that have got him, and those 500 people take him out of your side. This might be family and friends.
Fair enough.
That's my thoughts.
So Ben's also listed here, Alex Davies. So we did mention him. He's actually still in 263,000. So because of his cog there as sort of that mid just outside swallow, is he the one that gets some extra CBAs? It's just more of a one to watch. I'm not sure that will be anything to look at, to be honest, this year, because the one that we probably should be talking about is Sam Flanders. And I think that he's the one that comes in and now gets that 4th most CBAs. And I've been interested in Flanders pretty much from the get-go. He's a forward mid, 256K, so at the perfect price point. But the one thing about this mid-pricer is it's a breakout mid-pricer. So there's all different types of mid-pricers. There's mid-pricers who have been there and done it. They've got this previous scoring history and they've had a role change or whatever. It's going back to a favorable role change, or they're just coming back from an injury, and therefore they've dropped something like an Yo, and they're going back to again another previous role that has been scored. They've scored well in. Therefore, they're a really cheap price. This one's a little bit different in that we're basically banking on a breakout to happen. And having said that, there is a lot of preseason chatter about him. The coaches have been talking him up. His teammates have been talking him up. How good he looks inside with his use. He had an absolutely amazing back end to the VFL. I think he averaged something stupid like 130 or 140 Supercoach over the back 12 games or something of the VFL last year. Like, he's got the pedigree. He's a top 10 draft pick. Actually, I was pick 11, I think. And it's just about opportunity.
I think you've mucked up because he was playing in the senior team. I think you're talking about Sardis or whatever. He was the VFL guy. Because Flanders was playing.
Really? When did he play?
Flanders played the second half of the year in the seniors.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. Yep.
Must have played all forward, really.
Okay. And that definitely was playing. I know the player you're talking about. I know what you mean with the VFL. I'll get onto that one in a second. But the Flanders was definitely playing, and that I think he was playing up in the forward line, but he played the second half of the year. And that definitely know that.
So look, it's more about a complete breakout, and that would be based on the opportunity of him getting CBAs and getting a lot more mid time. The thing is, he's not going to get that much where he's going to be like an absolute must have, because ultimately what's his best case scenario in terms of CBA is maybe 40-50%, like absolute best case scenario. Worst case scenario is he's just and that's what I mean. So they're not taking CBAs away from Anderson, Rowell and Touk. Their mid mix isn't decreasing to allow Flanders in there. He's always going to be a chop out with a forward playing in a mid role and not the other way around, or off the bench, etc. So therefore, he's going to be impacted by either time on ground or his time in the midfield. So can he score when he's not there? But at his price, it's still one of those ones where you're like, well, he could really. So he could average 80 plus, maybe a bit more.
I'm a little bit less on that, but I feel like if there's one injury in that midfield, and that I don't even care if he's at 300K, then I'm probably trading to get him in. And that I think, he's just he's one injury away from just really dominating, and being a dominant like 85 guy. But at the moment, I've sort of pegged him more that 70-ish mark, which is still some value because I think that's still about 23, 25 points on his break even. So there is some value there for him. I want one injury from going, get this guy in your side.
Well, I'm looking at him as a guy. So I've got a lot of people know I've got Sheed in my side, and I've had him for quite a while. And I'm not necessarily 100% sold on Sheed, but I do like the role, and I think that he's going to score well. But I'm also of the opinion that if he doesn't work out, I want to trade quickly. Mm-hmm. And there's three guys that I'm looking at in order to do that too. One of them is Will Setterfield. So if he gets that sort of main big mid role at Essendon and big mid minutes, he could perform really well. So I want to have a little bit of money left over so I can possibly go up to him. Or the other two that I'm looking at is Flanders and then Callaghan. So if I get if one of those two fires, I can go Sheed down to them and then use that cash elsewhere. So I don't think he's going to be one that I want to start, but he's one that I am keeping an eye on and monitoring. And if things change in the preseason or he does fire early in those first two rounds, he could be someone that I might want to trade through in round 3. So I'm definitely keeping an eye on him, but I'm definitely not starting him either.
Yeah, no, agree, mate.
All right, now on to rookies. So we'll try and fire through. This has been a pretty long podcast without Ben to sort of control the time.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I know you're going to go into a lot of other rookies, but I'll just start off with the first one, and that's which I don't think you've got on the list, and that is that James. Now I think it's Sitas.
Sitas.
Let me just absolutely butcher names as I always do here. He's the one that finished absolutely on fire in the VFL. Yeah. So they don't do the Supercoach scores, but it's like fantasy scores down there, and some of the numbers he was putting up.
He
So
was
like
doing that
there was
before, though.
like
They picked
I
him
think
up
the
in the mid-season, didn't they?
I think second last game I had 130 odd, maybe 135 AFL fantasy in a VFL
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
Like just stupid numbers.
Yeah, so he's got the midfield pedigree, and that's the biggest thing, right? So if there's an opportunity and then he actually gets a game, there'd have to be an LTI to one of the big three for him to get a look in a favourable role. But if he is, I think he's forward, isn't he? Forward mid 123K?
Forward 123,
yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
So yeah, he's the sort of guy that if you got the role and opportunity, and it would have to be through injury, that you'd jump on straight away. And that's why no one has him right now, because I don't think he's a chance to make.
And he's in actually, I think he's 10%.
Really?
Yeah, 10%.
That's crazy, because I don't think he's a guy that's probably in their best 22. He might be
I've
had
him. I must admit, I've had him in and out because I think but then I was more worried because I'm like, oh, he's probably going to be that sub option.
Yeah, I think that he's a guy that you look as a sub, and let's say they sub off a big, maybe Chol gets rested, or maybe even go off with Witts. I don't know how that would go, but they want a little bit more mobility, and then they throw him on as an extra midfielder around the ball. That could be an opportunity for him, but I can't see him getting the right rookie opportunity without an injury to their midfield.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a big, big no at this stage. But I'd be looking elsewhere. Ben King, obviously, is a very talked about 176K forward. I think the appeal for him is a couple of things. And it's first and foremost that he's quite clearly their best forward by an absolute mile. And for that reason, he's not a sub risk. They're not going to sub him out in the fourth quarter. You don't get shorter. All right. So that's not going to happen. However, he has posted some really, really shocking full game scores. And there's conjecture over that as well. That whole pathway of those scores is that, Gold Coast were a lot worse. They've got a lot better. He straightens them up a lot more. He should get more opportunity. So therefore, has that risen his floor? And the answer is probably yeah. He's also had obviously another couple of years in the system, etc. So I can understand that. What you're really hoping for King is that in the first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, he has a bag in him. So hits a 4 or 5 goal bag, hits you an 80 to 100, and really gets that cash gen started, because he also has the potential to drop a 20, 30, 40,
it's not
50
even
sometimes.
that, mate.
So,
like, can I get, so obviously he missed all of last year, 2021, which, it's only his third year.
Didn't he have a 9 or something like that?
Yeah, he had a run. It was one split. He's gone 22, 24, 25. Then he's gone the big bag and gone 114. And then he went 11. 11. And then he scored. And then,
that was probably scaled up.
Then he's gone 12, 21, 18. Like,
oof, yeah.
And that's the worry, because his break even's 32, and people are like, oh, well, he averaged 53. There's 100K there. Surely improves, gets to an average of 60. But he can put it, and it's not like the odd one game. Okay, he's going to come out and kick your bag, get you 112, might put up this stupid 12 the next week, and then comes back and gets his 50, 60, 70. He actually can do a month of scores under 20. It's not out of the question, and that does really scare me.
And the other thing is that at his price point, there's other guys around that too that you'd be looking at for similar scoring or better scoring. His security comes with the fact that he's not a sub risk, but it comes with a huge other risk of lack of scoring opportunities. So you'd be banking on the fact that Gold Coast are a better team, which they are. Losing Rankin, I think, really hurts. Yeah, he really showed last year he's an absolute massive force. When delivering inside 50 and can be a goal assist king. So that does help and hurt them a little bit.
Coming off an ACL, and he's getting the number one defender each week. And there's some now, and that's the other thing we talked about, the draw. That's the other part that really worries me. So Ben King's appeared in my team, but when we talk about round one, Sydney, Sydney's one of the best defenses in the league. But probably don't have the gorilla, there's the McCartan boys, compared to some of the other gorillas, but they work so well as a defense and very miserly down there. Round 3, Geelong. Geelong give nothing away. They're their home games as well. And we talked about early on the year, it's quite warm. If they're evening games, which I'm not too sure if they are,
Yeah.
Could be greasy up there.
Ball's a bit slippery.
That's it.
Most of them are nighttime games because they're trying
because of the heat and stuff like that.
Yeah, that too, but they're also trying to generate the crowds and things like that, and they want to have those experiences down the Gold Coast. They sell a lot of those packages.
Yep.
So
Actually, I do have it here. So yeah, the Swans game's the Saturday night at 8 p.m. The Geelong game is actually a Sunday game. That even then, but yeah, you're getting to what's it, round 6 till they get North Melbourne. Yeah, it's a bit of a worry, and even
by then you want to be trading him out.
I'd be wanting to trade him. I would be hoping to get about 8 weeks out of him, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. It's the really soft couple games. It might be, and he scored well against Richmond before, which is round 7. But we're talking West Coast, that round 9. Yeah, it's a hard one because Sydney, Geelong, Freo, who don't allow most goals, 3 of their first 5 games, and that it's probably their 3 toughest games to play against.
I think I started with him in my first round 1 team, and then I haven't had him in my team ever since. I'd much rather I know it's a lot more expensive, but I'd much rather Oscar Allen. Proven commodity is what's happened with Jack Darling there?
Jack Darling, yeah, he's had I'm not too sure if it's a serious ankle.
I know he got injured yesterday, but I'm not sure how bad it is.
Yeah, Oscar Allen's now pretty well the number 1 forward at West Coast, which is a similar thing. But the difference to me, Allen, a little bit more seasoned there. But he's got the home deck, gives them more room to play. They're better conditions for forwards. Like we've seen Kennedy for so long, and it's not like Kennedy's gone out and averaged hundreds, but they get more space at home. The West Coast forwards usually bob up and kick 3 and 4 goals. It's pretty well guaranteed.
Well, part of the reason is their setup is like that, hey. And the difference with the Gold Coast setup is that they're not designed for that. Again, it's clearance or don't win it at all. They're not a transition team. They're not a kick and mark team. They don't create space like West Coast do.
And the other thing with West Coast,
very different.
They've got North Melbourne, they've got the Giants in there, and then before they start hitting your Melbournes and Geelong, so there's the ability for Oscar Allen to kick 3, 4, 5, where we've just talked about some of those games, and Ben King's in 30% of teams, so this is why it's very relevant.
That's huge.
So a lot of people are banking on him being the guy, and you're going, okay, you need him to pretty well average 55 to 60 to really be looking at your 100 to 150K. I'm not confident he comes out and second round does it, maybe kick some goals against the Bombers. It's not guaranteed. They've still got a decent back line. But what happens if Geelong get hold of him and he gets what do you do round 3? So round 1, we've got the Swans, we've got the Bombers. Round 3, where prices start changing, and he comes out and scores another 15 or a 20 there. And that's going to be in his cycle for 3 weeks. And that's my worry about it there, because you're in no man's land with him.
And they could put 100 points on him quite easily, like realistically. Yeah, and he might get some consolation goals in the 4th quarter that worth 3 Supercoach points each.
Yeah, and like if he'd shown me in the past where he consistently scores 50s, easy. But it's the problem. Like he could come out against Essendon and score 100. The following week he can score 11. Like it's just not, and it's coming back from
his
a long-term injury.
His off-ball work isn't really great, is it?
No, he has no off-the-ball work.
Yeah. That's the problem.
Because we just talked about the Sun setup.
If he's not a contested mark,
Yep.
There's nothing there if it's not a contested mark, or he's not really great at ground level. Look, I'm on a no. I haven't really been on a yes for a long time, and there's nothing really that I've through all the research that we've done in the preseason. He would have to come out and absolutely blow me away in the preseason games for me to be interested.
I'm hoping actually he does. I want him to kick a few in one of them, because I think they could get. I think they could get to 50%, and I'm happy to play against that. I'm happy to play against 30%.
Well, I'm in my team, and I'm actually going to be recording my pod after this.
Yeah, same.
I'm looking to go a little bit deeper in my forward line than most, because and part of the reason is these forwards that everyone's banking on, making them cash. They're not like the forwards of last year or the year before. They're not Jarman Impey. They're not Jack Zeeble. Like these guys were, forwards.
Rumor is they are Jack Zeeble, but
yeah, exactly right. Well, the GOAT, I like to call him.
All right, next rookie,
um,
mate.
yeah, so
Let's go.
we'll briefly touch on Bailey Humphries. So I don't think he's really an option there, but 184k forward mid. Look, he's a lead up, Heaney type player, of course. Impact player. He's not really one that you traditionally say would be a great super coach option early on in his career. He could be one to watch, but at his price, he's kind of a bit of a write off for me at this point. I can't see myself going close to picking him. I'm not even sure how close he is to being in, say, a round one team. But he's a guy that will be on our radar for in a few years. But he's definitely a forward more than a mid, and not the other way around. So those sort of players are generally slow Supercoach stories to start with, and they can pick up as they go along, but they don't have the role to be able to make it worth it at his price at 84k. So that's just my opinion. Connor Blakely, 123k mid. I think he's a bit of a waste, to be completely honest. He's sort of a lot of people's placeholders. He's not playing unless they get an injury. He's not their best 22. I don't think he's their sub. I think that if you've got him on your bench, he's probably not playing unless you might get a downgrade option during the season if there's a big injury or something like that. But he's not in their regular 22. What are your thoughts on him? And I suppose you could probably pocket that with, Charlie Constable is probably in the same boat.
Yeah, well,
123k defender mid.
Constable and Blakely are both in 17% again.
Yeah.
So it's
I can't
I
see them
just
playing.
don't. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of either pick unless, like we saw it, like if they come in the preseason, they're both picked. It's a different story, isn't it? Out of interest about Bailey Humphries, because he went 6th in the national draft. Where do you take him in keeper on that? Because keeper is going to be that most people are going to take everyone should be taking Ashcroft at pick 1. But
so here's the thing with guys so this is an important consideration. So with keeper, it's important to draft guys that are going to play in that position. He's probably going to be a forward for most of his career for Supercoach. Therefore, he's got a bit more value because guys that start forward and then work their way in the midfield eventually will change. And if they're not a top tier mid, they're going to be completely useless for you when they switch into that mid only role, right? So if he's going to maintain that forward status and be, say, a 95 to 105 averaging forward, he's got some real value. And I do think that that's where it will probably sit with him. I don't. If you take him in a keeper league, I mean, the top 3 guys, like main mids, are probably a lot better. A lot better. Obviously, Ashcroft is an absolute jet. Elijah is Satar. Is it Satars?
Yeah, let's go Satars, whatever. That's
he's got to be an absolute Supercoach jet as well. He's going to have the role in that midfield that's going to set him up for some good Supercoach scoring early and long. I'm not sure whether I would even jump at Bailey Humphrey at this point. I probably would pass on him.
There's a part of me that likes Cam McKenzie more because Hawthorn
I like Cam
midfield
McKenzie
opportunities, and he does kick the ball. So, and if I'm taking a forward, I'm taking Sheasel. If I'm in that position before Humphrey,
I'd take Jai Clark as well.
Yeah, because he's more likely to get that Selwood role and that, and just the way Geelong's going to transition their team going forward. And you could nearly make the argument as much as you've got like Elijah Hewlett there, who's already looking like going to be a great midfield option. So you're in that. Then it becomes Mateus Philippou, who's in that same situation as
same situation.
So
then it's a coin flip. So okay,
yeah. So I'm not hot on the Humphrey pick as well in keeper and that. I think obviously if I'm sitting there at pick 10 and the others are off the board, well, I'm left with no choice. But it's
or live trade the pick and get something of value. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not too hot. I don't like drafting guys like that are potential to be okay.
Yeah.
I need to see the fruit before I'm going to throw a big draft pick at them. So, I'm completely in agreement with you in that regard.
Yep.
Now, some draft relevance. Now, I think this is something that's been written. He's always been hot on Brandon Ellis. I don't know. He's just always that guy that will come out and bob in and go drop a 120. You go, oh, Ellis dropped a good score, and then next week he drops a 60, and you go, oh, that's right, it's Brandon Ellis.
Mate, I had years of it. He was my whipping boy when he was at Richmond. There was the Freo game where we still laugh about that. I think it was Grimo and I, that Brandon Ellis kicks the match winner. We're like, we can't believe it. Ellis is the hero, and then Mundy literally 10 seconds later kicks the winner. And we're like, of course, the footy gods were never letting Brandon Ellis be a match winner.
No.
Yeah, I actually have enjoyed watching him more play at the Suns, and that I'm happy for him that he's playing his role there, but it's a bit hit and miss. We talked about like sort of that Freo, which side of the wing or which side of the half back they come through that particular game, and there's some games they come through Ellis for everything, or he takes the intercept marks and he pops up and goes 120. There's other weeks where there's no ball that goes through him, and a few kicks here and there, so he's too inconsistent as a choice. He's not a bad one for your drafts, and that because he will still average fairly well, and he's pretty durable. He stays on the park, and that I had a few issues last year, but you've got to be willing to. He's the sort of guy that he's probably better in a way for classic. He's never a classic standard player because throughout a whole season, he might average you 85 to 95. He's got that range in him, but he's going to annoy you in your head-to-head matchups. He's going to win some for you. He's the sort of defender that he's going to come out and score a 140. And people can be like, oh my God, how did I lose to Brandon Ellis? And then the next week he scores you a 50 and you're like, oh my God, I lost because of Brandon Ellis.
Pretty much. Yeah. I actually, from the defenders, from the Suns, I look like he's coming back from injury. Will Powell is probably the one that I'd more look at as someone that can potentially score a little bit more. So Weller's obviously still out with an injury.
Powell went down with injury. This is a big thing in our keeper league because I literally had a trade.
He's expected to be back round 1 or 2.
I had a trade set up in our keeper league ready to go, and literally the next day, Powell goes down injured, and the guy, I forget who it was, messaged me back and said, "Don't worry about that trade anymore." And I'm like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" But yeah, Powell's definitely a very good scorer if he comes back. So not one now.
He's almost back in full training. He's
getting close.
He's running and he's getting close to full training again. So I actually saw a news report on him yesterday, I believe. So yeah, look, he's a guy that he's going to have. Basically the reins off that half back line moving forward. They don't have Markov anymore. Obviously, he was delisted. So they're going to have a mover, and they love his use. I do like the way that he uses the ball. So he's one that I can see sliding as well, especially with everyone knows that he's obviously injured at the moment. So one that you can pick up in draft pretty late and with some pretty good upside. So I don't mind Will Powell. I'd prefer Will Powell over Brandon Ellis.
For sure, because Ellis you're paying more of a premium compared to what Powell.
Exactly right. And that's about it, guys. Is there anything else that you want to touch on for Gold Coast, mate?
We've literally spoke for 3 hours about the Suns and that, so no, we're good, mate. We're good.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thanks for that. We'll catch you next time. I'll see you later.
Bye.